Welcome to day 142 of reading for 30 minutes every single day for the rest of my life. I'm so excited. Tonight we got The Alien Perspective by David Whitehouse. A new view of humanity and the cosmos. I'm at the middle of page 212, and I think I'm going to finish this book tonight. Yeah, let's go. And then we'll get started on The Fellowship of the King, which I'm so excited about. Fantasy, let's go. Story. Yeah, let's get started. I'm so confident I'm going to be finishing this tonight. So here we go. 30 minutes starting now, day 42. Let's get it. In the past, those considering life in space focused on stars like our sun, the only type of star we know that nurtures life. But the discovery of planets orbiting red dwarfs has led to the intriguing possibility that it might not be sun-like stars that provide most of the sites where life could exist. Our solar system, with its fat, bright star, could be a rarity. The overwhelming numbers of red dwarfs could make them the chief place for life in the cosmos. Long after our relatively short-lived sun has died and become an old, cold cosmic cinder, the red dwarfs will have hardly started their cosmic lives. No red dwarf has yet left its childhood. Perhaps on worlds around some of them are super civilizations of beings who have had far longer to evolve than would be possible around a sun-like star. We cannot even imagine what they might be like, or what such life could become. Perhaps one day we will find out. They might be closer than we think. The return signal from Gliese 581 could be here in 2051. The white dwarf that was our sun will cool very slowly to become a black dwarf. It will take a very long time, much, much longer than the current age of the universe, and because of that, there are no black dwarfs anywhere in the universe at present. That's so cool. Far beyond the age of stars, even the red dwarfs, it will no longer give off any light and will continue to cool forever. There is a possibility that a black dwarf might turn into iron after an incredibly long time, in which case it might explode, and then for a while the dark universe will be lit up by the last act of our sun and other suns. The universe is expanding, but does space go on forever? The popular theory of cosmic inflation says that space is endless, but most of it is out of our reach. This is why we can only see distant objects, because their light has time to reach us. The Big Bang was 13.8 billion years ago, and because space is expanding with light in transit, the greatest distance we can see in any direction is currently 45 billion light years. But if the universe expands forever, it won't always be that way. Pity any astronomer around in a trillion years from now, because for them the universe will be black. There are about 30 galaxies in our local group, but then they will have all merged into one big galaxy, and everything else will have passed over their cosmic horizon. This is because the expansion of the universe will be taking everything else away at speeds greater than that of light. Greater than that of light. You might think that anything traveling faster than light is impossible, and usually it is. But what is happening is not matter moving in space, but space expanding, which can expand greater than light speed. This means that the light from distant galaxies will get fainter and fainter until they recede into the cosmic dark. For those future astronomers, the past will be closed to them, and they might not even be able to deduce the history of the universe. By 2 trillion years into the future, even the cosmic microwave background, the echo of the Big Bang we all see around us today, will be diluted and impossible to detect. All that will be visible will the dead and dying stars of the local galaxies and blackness beyond. Everything else would have disappeared. We live at the time to be astronomers. We live at the best time to be astronomers. Life at this time in the future could still find the energy needed to survive. There will still be stars aplenty and rotating black holes, and tens and trillions of years of potentially good living will stretch before them, but eventually things will get hard. In 100 trillion years, all star formation will end. The red dwarfs stars will die. These dead stars will still have their planets orbiting around them, but eventually gravitational encounters with other stars will fling them off into interstellar space, and the universe will be populated by nomad planets. Indeed, anything in orbit is doomed, as its orbital energy will eventually be taken away by gravitational radiation, leaving the orbiting bodies to collide. Eventually, black holes will devour all the stars in the galaxy. After the age of stars, the black holes will rule, but not even they can go on forever. Black holes are the most remarkable objects. I'm gonna read like this. In 100, black holes are the most remarkable objects. They are made of just folded space, and as such reveal the fundamental properties of space and time. Although a black hole is just folded space, to make one you need gravity and matter. What has to happen is that the escape velocity of an object has to be greater than the light so that not even light can get away. The larger the mass of the black hole you require, the less that mass needs to be crushed. A black hole like the one in the center of our galaxy has a mass of about 4 million times that of our sun. To make it, you need a matter with a density about 100 times that of lead. But a more massive black hole requires matter of a lower density. One with a mass of about 100 trillion times that of our sun requires matter with the intensity of water. And if you could gather 4 billion times the mass of the sun and just there would be no need to compress it at its own gravity, would form a black hole itself. The idea that black holes will not last forever was discovered by Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, who made one of the most fundamental discoveries about them. They actually aren't black. He found out that the point that marks the limit for the black hole, the event horizon, which was pressed, means that no exit from the black hole is possible. The black hole's gravity can pull particles out of nothing. Empty space isn't really empty. Particles are being created and destroyed all the time. The dominant energy of the universe resides in empty space, and we have no idea why. This is called Hawking radiation, and it's formed when pairs of virtual particles are generated just on the boundary of the event horizon. According to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, there is a certain probability that in every point in space, a particle and its antiparticle could appear, briefly before annihilating each other and disappearing back into the vacuum. They are said to borrow their energy from the universe, which is a romantic way of looking at it. The black hole disrupts that particle pair, pulling one of them towards its past the event horizon. It's propelled off into space, carrying energy with it. Hawking showed that this radiation gives the black hole a temperature. In a fundamental way, he linked the gravity of black holes to the science of heat flow, thermodynamics, a connection that astounded his fellow physicists. The energy removed from the black hole by Hawking radiation caused it to shrink. How fast it shrinks depends on the temperature and energy flow and the thing that we all know. Heat flows from hot to cold and not the other way around. A black hole whose mass is larger than the moon has a temperature that is lower than that of 2.7 degrees microwave background radiation. Although it will be giving off Hawking radiation, it will be receiving more energy than it radiates, meaning that all the black holes we see in space are getting bigger. But as the universe expands and microwave background radiation will become more and more dilute and its effective temperature will fall, remember the astronomers of the far future in the local group of galaxies. This means that when the background temperature of space falls below the temperature of any individual black hole, it will then give off more radiation than it absorbs, and the black hole will have a net loss of energy and get smaller. As its mass decreases, the black hole will evaporate through the details of its final phases, and far from worked out. Black holes would have their time, but eventually they will all dissipate into the midst of particles. Atoms themselves have not been stable in the long term. If one of their constituents, protons, are stable, then so are atoms. If they are not, as some suggest, they even will dissipate. If protons do decay, then atoms will fall apart. Every single one. Bro. We don't even know if protons decay because the universe isn't even that old. Like they could start decaying. That's crazy. Atoms themselves may not be stable in the long term. If protons do decay, then atoms will fall apart, every single one. All that will be left in the universe will be a bleak environment of electrons, positrons, neutrinos, and photons. And what of life? Boltzmann's brain. Time is the hero of the plot. Given so much time, the impossible becomes possible, the possible probable, and the probable virtually uncertain. One only has to wait. Time itself performs miracles. George Wald, 1955. For you are a mist that appears for a little and then vanishes. James 4:14. I said earlier that some believe that the beauty of all things is that they must end. But what is beautiful about the end of all things? Is this just the fate of life in the universe? Every spark of consciousness to flame, gutter and die, every history from billions of worlds from the Hubble galaxies onward, every work of art and achievement of science, every hope and dream and every love just a temporary mark on the cosmos that fades to in a sequence in the face of pitiless physical laws that wind the universe down, condemning it in all of its wonder to an uncertainty of nothing, to eternity of nothing? Will all the questions ever be asked and answered disperse into a mist of particles into a featureless universe with just the occasional flash of light as an electron and positron collide? Will the extremes of space and time abandon all life and structure as the laws of the universe play out, leaving only the formless and the useless? If one word, one concept, summarizes this travesty of creation of its doom, yet here, as we contemplate the end of all timelines, the future still stretches to infinity. We have arrived at the end when all things cease except time. Even then, there is still far more future than past. There always will be eternities of nothing to come. Is the story of our universe an eternal tragedy? Let me give you an inkling of eternity. Imagine a long, straight road, perhaps like the ones through the desert in the United States. You are standing on the road and there are two people either side of you. For the sake of the argument, one could be one of your parents and the other one your offspring, but they only need to be from the previous and future generation. They are spaced 1 meter behind and in front of you. Now more people are added behind and in front. You don't have to travel far behind to see people you have never met. 5 meters is 5 generations, which is truly, if we can take a generation to be 25 years. At 250 meters, you have gone back to the time of building the Stone Age and in the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Wow, that's crazy. You could walk along the road to that point in just over 2 minutes. Wow. That's insane. A 10-minute walk would take you back 1,000 generations or 20,000 years and well into the last ice age. It is approximately 17,500 meters back to the first humans. It is a distance of 5 times around the Earth to take us back to the time the Earth was born. To get to the origin of the universe, the distance is somewhere between Jupiter and Saturn. So at 20 years a meter, the beginning of the universe is substantially less than halfway across our solar system. That's the past. It's finite. Now look at the other direction along this eternity road. If all that time there had of the next 100 million star of the 100 million that comprise our galaxy, which is 100,000 light years across, imagine then the distance to and from every single galaxy in the Hubble Extreme Deep Field. Further, imagine a trip to and from every star in the universe, and you have still made not the slightest impression to infinity. This is the dimension where the universe is heading. So, what hope is there? Should intelligences and civilizations content themselves with their existence for whatever period they can manage? There may be beings out there that have existed for billions of years, perhaps calling themselves eternals. Perhaps some of them can move planets, stars, or galaxies, or even manipulate the shards of time. But even those who engineer the universe would know their fate. As we shall see, the time for life is small, as is the time of stars and galaxies. Can life survive long term in the universe, or is it, relatively speaking, a fleeting cosmic phenomenon? Will it provide the universe with a new dimension of existence? Will it provide the universe with a new dimension of existence, a way it has been said for the universe to know itself, only to be extinguished as an inevitable consequence of the laws of the cosmos? Will there be a time when the universe is lifeless, when there is not a single thought to be found anywhere, no experiences, nothing anywhere forever? When the galaxies fade and dissipate, when black holes die and time is even space disintegrate, will there be no one to witness or chronicle these events, to fight for survival or face extinction? Or will life have found a way to survive, a way out, and abandoned our universe? Perhaps made others and escaped into them? That's what I think. The black holes that one day rule the universe can be plentiful, long term sources of energy. A crude way to get the energy out is to simply send asteroids or even planets and stars into them. Gravitational tidal forces will rip them apart, creating a disk of hot gas circling the black hole from which energy can be harvested. Nature does this itself, as its so called accretion disks can be found around black holes and neutron stars. One imaginative astronomer remarked that there are a rather larger number of such objects in the central regions of our galaxy, where one might expect there to be more alien civilizations, and perhaps they are already using accretion disk energy. Another way to extract energy from a black hole would be to exploit the properties of a region around it called the egrosphere, derived from the Greek ergon, which means work. Dumping mass into a black hole would obviously increase its mass, but if done in the right way, it would also impart energy to the craft, releasing the mass at the expense of the black hole's rotation. Using these techniques, a civilization could obtain energy for a trillion years, long after the stars have gone. When the stars and black holes have gone, all that will be left are particles becoming more and more dispersed. And perhaps you are there as well. One of the implications of a universe that expands far ever to the possibility that your universe, that is everything around you, all your friends, family, and memories, does not exist, and you are actually a bodiless, isolated, random mist of particles coming together for an instant while all else is ancient, structureless universe laid waste by time and entropy. In this wasteland, due to chance alone, particles have assembled to create your brain and its memories. This is a speculation that scientists have called the Boltzmann brain, after the physicist Ludwig Boltzmann, who is often referred to as the father of entropy, and it gets stranger the more you think about it. Because it is such an unlikely event, the time for such a brain to have a possibility of existing is very long, far, far beyond anything we have yet considered. These particles would come together for about an instant and then fly apart again. You would be here and then gone, but wait long enough and it would happen again, and you would be back with no inkling of an interruption. Wait long enough, really long enough, and you would be back, lasting almost forever. Such as an amazing about infinity, it means that a Boltzmann brain would last for infinity. These leads to a strange conclusion. If you consider your brain, that one that developed on planet, and the Boltzmann brains to come out in a far distant universe, and if you are unable to tell them apart, then the Earth-born brains will be just one, whereas there are an infinity of Boltzmann brains. So the chance of you being that one example out of an ensemble of infinity is infinitely small. That is zero. By this logic, a typical observer is a fluctuation, and you are a bodiless Boltzmann brain floating at the end of the universe. One could ask, if you can't tell the difference, then why would you care? You should care if you are interested in the truth. However, the problem is that there really is no way of telling which option is the case, but if you are a Boltzmann brain, then the implications are profound. For a start, it means that you can't trust anything. You are a random fluctuation. You cannot rely on anything, including everything you know or what you think everyone else knows. It could all be arbitrary and subject to change at any time, but you might say in your world you have consistency and laws of science that obey a certain logic. Surely that represents some form of bedrock of reality. I'm afraid not. It could all still be a fluctuation, a consistent, logical, coherent fluctuation, but a fluctuation nonetheless. This is why scientists regard Boltzmann brains as bad. One way out of this conundrum is to postulate that the universe will never evolve into a condition in which Boltzmann brains are possible. At the moment, we do not know if the universe acceleration will continue forever, diluting all matter and radiation, or if there could be a contraction with the universe able to replenish itself and start again in a replay of the Big Bang. Some scientists believe that the universe is cyclic, with expansions, contractions, and there will be another Big Bang. For the duration of each cycle determined by how much dark energy there is in the universe. The time scale could be hundreds of billions of years, which is far, far less than necessary for Boltzmann brains to form. If this is the case, then we can say that you are not such a brain, and that your memories are real, and that all the time the chaos is increasingly relentlessly. Perhaps the life in far future would consider that their best alternative would be to leave the decaying universe altogether and make a new universe. Some physicists believe that black holes could create new daughter universes, allowing aliens to move into those that could sustain life. In turn, those suitable universes would have chosen to produce new ones that are also able to support life. Imagine entire civilizations entering black holes to migrate to new universes spawned from them. If the universe was designed in some manner, could there be some evidence that was the case? One of the most fascinating ideas in Sagan's Contact is that the designers of the universe left a message woven into the fabric of reality. The heroine of the story is Ellie Arroway, and she is told by the wise and ancient aliens that when she returns to Earth, she could tell scientists to calculate the value of the fundamental constant pi, for it is not random, and if enough digits are calculated, a message will appear. Actually, this is not as clever as idea as anyone would think, even though it does make an interesting debate as a plot point. Because there was no end to pi, it's what's called an irrational number. If you carry on calculating it, you will eventually find every conceivable message, not just all the works of Shakespeare, etc. It's infinity all over again. Perhaps the way to survive the end of the universe is not to avoid it altogether. We do not know if time travel into the past is possible. Even conceptually, it raises profound problems, conundrums, and paradoxes. Suppose a civilization in the far future found a way to travel through time and made their way from a barren universe to a much younger, fruitful one. They would arrive with the knowledge of time travel and presumably next time avoid getting themselves into such a dire condition. They would have knowledge, technology, and power that would increase each time they went back in time, perhaps to return almost as gods. So, as has seen before, if time travel is possible at any time in the future, time travel should already be here, unless, of course, the future hasn't happened yet. I said there were paradoxes. But suppose there is no way out. Can life and intelligence survive as the universe grows colder and more chaotic? In essence, life is a very special way of processing information. In the human case, we have genetic information which determines the way our bodies function, as well as the information in our brains in the form of our personalities and memories, which is continuously augmented by experience and culture. Humans process from the world and exchange information with each other. It's the same for other forms of life. In order to live and have new experiences and memories, information must be processed. But as the universe gets older and galaxies spread out and stars and black holes decay, would it be possible for such form of life to exist? Or in other words, what limits would the universe place on information processing as it gets older? The physicist Freeman Dyson proposed a way for life to carry on based on his analysis of energy, temperature, and the relation to the information processing. For life to continue forever, Dyson suggested the information process should be infinite, while the energy consumed should be finite. But how is this possible? How can some form of life continue forever when the amount of energy required to sustain it is limited because the universe is becoming diffuse and cold? Dyson said it would be possible if the life form reduced its rate for processing information in step with the falling temperature of the universe. What this would mean is that the life form would have behaved slower and slower, and their perception of time might not change even though if a thought lasted a second or a billion years. The big problem is entropy, the increasing disorder of the universe, and keeping it sufficiently low that the life form can maintain the complexity it needs to exist. Each action it takes will generate heat, which will rise the entropy of its system. That heat and the entropy has to be disposed in some way. There actually is only one way, to radiate it all into the rest of space. But how does it do this and live at the same time? The answer is that it can't, and the solution is hibernation. Life at the end of the universe might have active periods interspersed with increasingly long periods of inactivity and rids itself of its entropy by cooling down. It does not matter that the sleeps would become longer and longer, as the one thing the universe has is time. The one thing the universe has is time. The temperature of the universe would continue to decrease during the hibernation quality of life. Since no information processing can take place during hibernation, the life form will not be aware of time passing. In a sense, during its active periods of life form would be living beyond its means, adding to the entropy of an unsustainable way that would lead to self-destruction if continued. It would be something like going to bed each night, with each night getting closer in terms, with each night getting longer in real terms, though you think each night is the same. These inhabitants of what to us would be an ancient universe would be traveling faster and faster into the future, but they would still be able to live. Not all agree that this could happen, and in case doubt that it would be possible for life, in principle, to last forever. One counter-argument is that eventually the universe would become so cold that the available energy would be less than that available to change the quantum state of the life form. In other words, it would not be able to emit or absorb energy to reduce its entropy. It would be permanently frozen in what physicists call the ground state, unable to process information and unable to reduce its entropy by radiating away energy. Another counter argument Another counter argument questions the way a life form would create a clock to wake itself up. Any form clock not consume any significant significant quantity of energy, free energy during hibernation. Otherwise, it would defeat the task of reducing the entropy. Another problem is that any life form has only a finite number of accessible quantum states. It must, from the time to time, return to a state that it has occupied before. This means that its memories will then be exactly the same as they were before, and it would be unaware it was reliving an earlier experience. Life would be an eternal repetition. Dyson saw a way around these problems by following the life form to be analog and not digital in nature, and that its use of energy does not fall below a quantum limit. In a digital system, the energy differences between states is fixed as the temperature of the universe trends towards zero, with the life form ceasing to operate when the temperature is much smaller than the energy differences. But this does not apply to the analog system. As an example, Dyson turned to science fiction, to Fred Howell's novel The Black Cloud, which features an intelligence composed to dust grains interacting by means of electric and magnetic forces. After the universe has cooled down, each dust grain will be in its ground state so that the internal temperature of each grain is zero, but the effective temperature of the system is the kinetic temperature of random motions of grains. Hence, information processed by the system resides on the non-random motions of the grains. The entropy increases as the information is processed. But in an analog system of this kind, there is no ground slate for an energy gap. The cloud expands as its temperature cools. You might think it is exceedingly strange that the basis of intelligent life in the universe will be the movement of particles, a new jig of life. But I remind you that what is inside cannot be determined by what is outside. Your universe is constructed by your brain, an organ that resides inside your head, in the dark, consisting of moving electrical impulses which hold that all that you are. Yet you experience time flowing in a rich, wonderful reality. Thus, the creatures at the far end of space and time might be moving particles on the one hand, but on the other hand they could be different. There is a piece of music by Frank Zappa called Civilization Phase 3. It involves a group of people living inside a piano away from the harsh reality of the outside. Their music is their world. In the face of a hostile universe, these remote beings would weave their posthumous tapestry of reality, perhaps not knowing how barren and lonely the basis of their existence was. I have thought that eventually there may be, in those far-off times, only one consciousness left in the universe, only one observer. Is it the fate of the life to turn inward and away from the universe and create its own reality until there's a hammering at the barricades from the outside? Analog life does not suffer from the internal repetition argument. Since the size of the cloud increases with time, the number of accessible configurations or states also increases with time. The capacity and memory of consciousness are steadily increasing, and the entire system can never return precisely to an earlier state. Is this a solution to eternal life? The answer is only if the expansion of the universe stops accelerating. If it doesn't, survival forever is impossible. This is because there will be a cosmic horizon that will not only allow any living system to increase its size indefinitely, and it will also be limited to a finite number of configurations and doomed to eternal repetition. The second unpleasant feature of its permanently accelerating universe is that its temperature does not increase to zero, but tends to a finite limit at late times. It is permeated by cosmic background radiation at a fixed temperature. and it is impossible for any living system to cool itself to a temperature below that. This means that the free energy required to process any amount of information is ultimately proportional to the quantity of information. If the reserve of free energy is finite, the total quantity of information is also finite. This is a dismal situation. If the universe is permanently accelerating, life is doomed. Wait long enough and the fundamental constants of the universe may change. May people have heard of the Higgs boson that was detected a decade ago by the giant particle accelerator at CERN that straddles the French-Swiss border. Here, subatomic particles, electrons and protons are slammed together at high energies, and out of the resultant flash of the energy, other particles can exist for an instant. Finding these particles and determining their properties is a part of finding out something of the bedrock of what all matter is made out of and how it behaves. Looks like that was time, but I'm going to keep reading. The Higgs boson is the particle that gives mass to all other particles, and its characteristics determine how much mass, say, an electron and proton have. Its properties were set during the very first moments of the Big Bang. If it changes, it would have rewrite the laws of the cosmos. It shows no sign of changing. It is effectively held in a quantum cage, likened to bring in a valley between mountains. The huge amount of energy required to change it would also be like climbing those mountains. If it were to make it over that energy hill, the destruction of the universe is waiting on the other side. Some speculate that a very rare quantum fluctuation could bring about a process called quantum funneling, in which the Higgs boson could reach the very other side without any climbing. This fluctuation could happen anywhere in the universe. It will take a very, 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 very long time indeed. But when it changes, it will destroy the universe it helped create it and overwrite it with a new one without the particles, the atoms, and the molecules we know. No one knows what new possibilities might emerge as these new speculations are at the forefront of physics. Some consider that eventually the substrate of the universe will decay and space and time will not be what they were replaced by. What? Is this the fate of all the universe, of all life in the universe? Every entry in the Museum of Alien Life, every history from billions of worlds from the Hubble galaxies onwards, every work of art and achievement of science, every hope and dream, and every love, just a temporary mark on the cosmos that fades to inconsequence in the face of pitiless physical laws that wind the universe down, condemning it and all of its wonder to an eternal entropic wasteland where the twin undertakers, entropy and infinity, ply their trade. As far as thought can reach. The last chapter. Everything is determined, the beginning as well as the end, by forces over which we have no control. Human beings, vegetables, or cosmic dust, we can dance to a mysterious tune intoned by the distance by an invisible piper. Albert Einstein, 1929. All stories, if continued far enough, end in death. Ernest Hemingway, Death in the Afternoon, 1932. In the meantime, it's a long meantime, we are left with two big questions. Why the great silence, and where are they? If we have the capability to detect signals, radio, laser, or otherwise, from aliens only a little more advanced than we are, then why have we found nothing? And why is there no evidence of having been visited now or in the past? Then that we have detected no evidence of telling us something profound, though we are not quite sure what. Are we unique? Or are aliens just rare? Or are there another explanation that involves humanity being observed and quarantined, or perhaps just ignored? I have no idea whether we will find life elsewhere in space, and if we will find any evidence for intelligent life. Nobody has. The arguments and the evidence are there, if that is what they are, but it is a grand experiment. We can search for life in space, and we may find in tomorrow, so we shall may be more prepared for it than we are more open-minded, realistic, and also be more harsh. Alien contact and its implications should not be ignored with a wave of hand and the comments about it being very unlikely. As the fictional detective Charlie Chan once remarked, strange events permit themselves the luxury of occurring. We are programmed to look after our young, to protect and nurture them, and to offer them guidance. This is a deep part of what it means to be human and the main reason why our species perpetuates. We cannot help but extend these feelings towards the stars, towards others in space, which is why so many look for wisdom and guidance from aliens, who some think might lead us to a utopia we cannot create for ourselves. We must discard our romantic notions of aliens, for they are echoes of our childhood, and pay some attention to our primal instincts and the lessons from myths and legends, for they have persisted for a purpose. We must be careful, as if we turn towards the stars, we may also turn away from something else that makes us human, something uncomfortable. As a species, we clearly have a deep desire to be accepted and approved by aliens, to become part of a wider family. But this is a way of ignoring a void within ourselves that only we, not aliens, can fill. There can be no civilization from the stars. We should not give to aliens a task we should not be doing ourselves. Over the years, SETI has been the subject of fad and fashion, and still is. From digging trenches in the Sahara Desert and filling them with burning kerosene and using giant motors to flash signals towards Mars, to the inflexible doctoring of radio signals that we have had for the past 60 years or so. Radio searches of the sky have not found anything, but they have had at least determined that we live in a quiet neighborhood. Interstellar communication by radio is more hit or miss than it has been betrayed since the days of Conconne and Morrison Infamy. Lasers, especially infrared lasers, have just as good, if not a superior rationale as radio waves as a means to signal between the stars. We should be excited about optical SETI programs because they can be done for more cheaply surveys with radio telescopes, using relatively small telescopes that have limited use in areas of astronomy. Looking for nanosecond pulses reduces the perils of interference. Such searches could be done by students, perhaps as part of their science or education paid by individual universities, and not by institutes that have the constant need for big money for big ideas. If you want big ideas, then we have the technology to build space observatories to look for infrared lasers. We might not find aliens because, despite our star-spanning radio telescopes and laser beams, we are not yet clever enough and not have yet passed that detection threshold that would enable us to access the messages and the chatter. Recently, there have begun the first searches for quantum communication, a way of encoding a message in a stream of squeezed or polarized light that we have never been able to examine before. What we have previously just detected as starlight might contain a weaker underlying signal using a secure communications channel already being used on Earth for unbreakable codes. The first steps have been made and nothing has been seen so far, but I wonder if that's why we haven't found aliens yet. Why we haven't yet found any aliens. The alien perspective also looks inward. As we contemplate finding aliens, possibly the immortals, we should realize what they, or indeed science itself, would not trivialize us, has not trivialized us. We need not regard ourselves or look into the cosmos with a sense of unimportance, as if we are just another planet, another unimportant example of primitive life scared by our universe and lacking in cosmic achievements. Even if the universe is empty, we must not regard it in ourselves with what some have called the anxiety of meaningless. The relationship between being and nothingness is a constant theme of religion and philosophy. How dare we be disenchanted with such an astounding cosmos and paint a picture of a frail, fallible humanity trembling before it? Certainly we have being, and I do not believe it is solipsism to assert that consciousness is the cause of the universe, just as surely as the universe is the cause of consciousness. No other life forms could tell us that the universe is more theirs than ours, no matter how ancient or powerful they are. Who could speak for Earth? Anyone who happens to have the keys to a radio telescope. What would we need is an international discussion about the subject that is mediated by the United States nations, that the organization just isn't interested. This is regrettable, since, as we have seen often in this book, we might just be dealing with issues that affect the future of our species. The UN Committee of the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space does not want to touch the issue. We must not let them ignore it. If we do not really announce our presence to the universe, we could go down what, in my view, would be an unwise path. Even though there are some SETI scientists who see this as a way to go, they would, wouldn't they? They argue that any risk assessment of the consequences of alien contact would not be helpful to the search, or in some would put it, the cause. This is because any risk evaluation would always reach the conclusion that it is unwise to draw attention to ourselves. Does this, as some suggest, represent a straitjacket for our species? I appreciate the argument, but I maintain that even if no one has the right to ignore the wider view of humanity, even if it elicits frustration and anger in those who want to send signals to the stars, one could argue that the burden of proof rests on those who think that aliens would be peaceful and noble. But that is no argument at all. No human can know what that until it is too late. We must realize that our speculations about aliens are colored by what we want to become, and ideas about ancient civilizations are a way of looking into our future when we expect aliens to be morally superior and altruistic. We are hoping that we will become more moral and altruistic in the future. They suggest either the future we wish for ourselves or the future that we fear will come for us if we do not change our ways. The great moment of contact may simply remind us that what we most want is to find a better version of ourselves. I am resigned to the inevitability that much of history is lost. In 10 billion years, will someone come searching for their equivalent of Ptolemy and unearth the lost stories of first contact? If we survive, we will eventually resume our nomadic ways of life as some of humanity, or what we are to become, leaves the earth for a life elsewhere. Eventually, we will have to go. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote in 1923, of course, it is strange to inhabit the earth, no longer to give up customs one can barely had time to learn, looking for somewhere else in an instinct older than humankind. We left the trees, left the savannah, walked out of Africa. We have no choice. We need the new planetary landscapes and cosmic challenges, relationship with aliens, new ways of thinking and being. We need to find and understand aliens to fully appreciate our place in the universe. Lauren Isley once wrote, "One does not meet oneself until one catches the reflection from one eye other than human. We are here for such a fleeting time when compared to the timescales of the cosmos, and we have above all a storytelling species, and we have above all become a storytelling species." I will leave you with one more. Louis Percival Peace entered the universe in Perth, Australia on 20th January 1999. His brain had been starved of oxygen during his birth, but he never gained consciousness. His family were heartbroken. His father, Andrew Pierce, was a keen astronomer with an international reputation as a comet observer. He would watch their tails of gas and dust stream through space and marvel as they faded when they moved away from the sun's warmth, back into a million-year hibernation. But in the hospitable standing next to the little Louis, none of that mattered. His parents held him, spoke to him, and kissed him while they awaited the inevitable. But they could not let their son leave the cosmos like this. So one night they wrapped him in a blanket and took him out to show him and talk to him about the stars and hope that during his brief life he would somehow know something, just something, about the cosmos that he would inhabit so briefly. Like the little girl in Walt Whitman's poem, he might know that there is something. Asteroid 6116 orbits the Sun somewhere between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter every 4 years and 9 months. Its large chunk of rock, 12 kilometers wide, and as one of the many great in that region of the solar system, it is unremarkable. But as well as a number, it also has a name, Asteroid Louis Pierce. Long after the Sun has died and spends almost an eternity cooling as a white dwarf, long after the galaxy has merged with others of our local group, this tiny chunk of rock could still be out there. Whatever its fate and that of the universe, there will always be a portion of space and time that belongs to Louis Pierce, as it does for you and me. Perhaps that is what we and any aliens could ever have. I have an inclination and a dream to believe the universe is full of life. I have no proof, but I believe we are not only creatures, sentient or otherwise, biological or mechanical or both mortal or eternal, who look at the cosmos in our different ways and differing levels of understanding, and wonder what it is we share. As you read this, there are countless alien sunrises taking place across planets in our galaxy and far beyond. Wow. The morning skies of alien worlds will come in many forms and may be witnessed by countless strange minds. Ceremonies and rituals, right at this moment. The first and last days of civilizations. Billions and billions of them are taking place with their associated tragedies and triumphs. Somewhere in a distant galaxy, a star will go supernova and destroy a billion sentient creatures who have no means of fleeing. Elsewhere, billions of giant world ships silently ply the space between the stars, looking for a new home carrying the libraries of forgotten worlds. Every year on May 1st, the city of Blaubeeren in Germany organizes a walk of about 10 kilometers to the most important caves of the vicinity that have been excavated. 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 At one of them, you can see a layer of rocks, dust, and ash on which markers have been placed to show the positions of artifacts that have been discovered. One of them is the small ivory plate called the Adorant, which its depiction of the constellation of Orion carved at the start of something that the artist knew nothing about. Perhaps it will be like that if we discover evidence of the aliens. Perhaps we humans will always have a middle understanding of the universe, and there will always be others who are able to see things and grasp concepts we cannot. Or perhaps we and the aliens will need each other as we face the future and whatever might come. There are religions that say God left the universe unfinished for us to complete. Perhaps we will not do that alone. The composer Gustav Mahler said that we do not compose that we are composed. We and all life are indeed composed by our universe, and I wonder if life will reach its finale someday. Have you listened to the end of Mahler's Ninth Symphony? A simple theme meanders away, growing fainter and more distant, but it refuses and refuses to fade, hanging on and on. Just another phase, one more note, and then it diffuses into nothingness, and eternity starts. Is it that the greatest force in the universe is survival? Returning to Walt Whitman, whose prose is often infused with almost unbearable sense of loss, he wrote about whispers of heavenly death and the sense that some soul is dying. But before that happens, imagine that in the faint light of a moon circling a distant world somewhere, something alien is listening to the ocean singing. And that was the end of the book. Wow, second book done. The Fellowship of the King is tomorrow, day 42. Let's go. That was The Alien Perspective by David Whitehouse. I absolutely love this book. Aliens are so fascinating. The idea of aliens is existing out there. I personally think they exist out there, and there are alien planets where the sun rises and there's intelligent species looking at and observing all of this. It's very fascinating. I loved this book so much. I'm definitely going to rate it a 7 out of 10. Solid 7 out of 10. Yeah, I really liked this book. Yeah. See you guys day 42 of reading 30 minutes every single day for the rest of my life. Let's get it. Fellowship of the King. Let's go. See ya.